We're going over System Pticha, the Preface to the Wisdom of Kabbalah by Bala Sulam. Chapter 4, the Hizdakchut, purification of the Masach screen, to the Atzilut emanation of the Parzuf face. 21, surrounding light, beating. Beating.
Beating by Baal HaSalam, number 33. Now we shall clarify the issue of the Betush, beating of Or Panimi, inner light, and Or Makif, surrounding light, on one another, which yields the Histakut, purification of the Masach screen, and the loss of the last Behina phase of Aviut, coarseness. As those two lights are opposites, yet connected to the Masach, the screen, in Malhut, kingdom of the Rosh, head of Adam Kadmon, primordial man, they beat and strike one another. Explanation, number 33. Now we shall clarify the issue of the beating of the inner light and the surrounding light on one another, which yields the purification of the screen and the loss of the last phase of coarseness. As those two lights are opposite, yet connected to the screen and kingdom of the head of primordial man, they beat and strike one another.
Explanation. Beating. Explanation. And 33. Now we shall clarify the issue of the beating of inner light and surrounding light on one another, which yields the purification of the screen and the loss of the last phase of coarseness. These two lights are opposites, yet connected through the screen and kingdom of the head of primordial man, they beat and strike one another. So what we're talking about is after the person has crossed the barrier, they've received the first light in the world of primordial man, Adam Kadmon, and they're in the Parzuf, the face of Galgalta, which is skull. Someone needs to mute. So what we have here is when we have our Parzuf, our spiritual face, we have the Rosh, which is the head, we have the Toch, which is the interior, and we have the Sof, which is the end. And the separator between the Rosh, which is the head, and the Toch, which is the interior, is the Peh, the mouth, which is called Malchut de Rosh, the kingdom of the head. The idea is that in the head we have the calculation of the spiritual face, which means in the head we have the phases, the root phase, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And the Peh, the mouth, is the separator, which is phase 4, right? So the idea is that the mouth, when the light comes and hits the screen, it will go back, and we'll talk about that in a moment. The idea is that in the head we've got the calculation where the person is receiving the tension of various degrees, and he's going to see how he's going to change the causality to go from tension to internal power. Afterwards, we have the Toch, the interior, and the separator between the Toch, the interior, and the Sof, the end, is the Tabor, the navel, which is called Malchut de Toch, the kingdom of the interior. Right? Because the idea is always in the kingdom, the light is not received. So the Malchut of the interior is the Tabor of the navel. And then we have the expansion of that Tabor of that navel, which is the Sof, the end. And we have the end, the last, the 10th emanation of the end, which is, of course, Malchut. So it's called Tziyum Raglin, end of legs. It's called Malchut de Sof, kingdom of end. So we've got the kingdom of the head, the kingdom of the interior, and the kingdom of end. Any questions? All right, let's continue. So we have the Ol Yashar, the direct light that hits the Peh, the mouth, right? The Malchut Rosh, the kingdom of the head. And then because the direct light doesn't enter into the Peh, doesn't enter into the mouth, right? Because there's the screen there. You get the reflected light. You get a vibration, and this vibration clothes the direct light. So you've got the direct light going down, and you've got a reflected light going back up, which is a vibration from the hit on the screen. That is, you've got the direct light, which is the thoughts, emotions, and sensations of certain tension levels. They go through tension level phase 1, root phase, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, And instead of entering into the phase 4, which is the individual, it gets bounced back, and the vibration from that being bounced back is called the Or Chozer, the reflected light. The light that gets bounced back is called Or Makif, the surrounding light. Right? So we've got, in the direct light, we've got root phase, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And the Or Makif, the surrounding light, is phase 4, which is being pushed away from the individual. The person, the individual who's crossed the barrier is saying, and this is all done automatically for the person when he crossed the barrier, where the screen says, I can handle the tension of nature, humanity, society, and group, but the tension of myself as an individual, that's too much for me. So I'm going to push that back and not receive that degree of tension into my perception. Then we have an expansion of the mouth expands into the toch, into the interior. And what we have is we have the direct light, which was calculated in the head. So we've got here root phase, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And now we've got a vibration as it vibrated from the mouth upwards, from the screen upwards, it's now vibrating from the screen downwards. So now you can see the difference that in the head, the vibration is going upwards, the opposite direction of the direct light, while in the interior, they're both going in the same direction. So both the direct light and the reflected light are clothing from top down. And top means pure, and down means coarse. So we're going from purity to coarseness in the interior, while in the head, we're going from coarseness to purity with the reflected light. And this combination of the direct light with being enclosed in the reflected light is called Or Pnimi, inner light. And because of that expansion, we also have, again, the Or Makif, the surrounding light, that instead of that phase 4 entering into the sof, into the end, it gets pushed back and gets sent away, which means it goes from coarseness to purity. And that phase 4, that tension of the individual, is not received in the individual, right, where it should be. So if it would have been received, it would have been received here in the end, which is the phase 4. So we said that this is the root phase, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And this is the phase 4 within the individual. So from the pair and beneath is the individual, and from the pair, which is the mouth and upwards, is nature, humanity, the society, and the group. And then finally, we have the Or Nekeva, which is the female light, which is the vibration continues going down and expands into the end as well. So you only have the expansion of the reflected light, and you don't have the direct light that was meant to be in the phase 4. Questions?
The light, the Or Makif, that's being reflected from the tabur and also reflected from the pei, is that the same light, or is it like reflected from the pei and then the inner light is taken in, and then any additional Or Makif light at that point is seen as Or Makif and rejected? Or is it accepted in along with the Or Primi when it goes down?
So the idea is that you first have the situation in the head, and then you have the interior. So the idea is that the interior is a new state on top, right? So think of the head being expanded down. So the surrounding light here and the surrounding light in the head and in the body is the same surrounding light. Just this is in a collapsed state, like a folder. This is like collapsed when it's called the head, and when it's expanded, it's called the interior.
So that's just an action of the masak being, or the screen being expanded like a bladder down into down to the tabur, or the interior.
Right.
And it just brings the light down as it expands.
Right, because we've got the mating. We've got the mating by striking, right? So the mating is the idea of the clothing of the vibration, and the striking is the pushback. So at the beginning in the head, you have the mating by striking both at the pair, both at the level of the pair. Then what happens is only the striking lowers down to the tabor, the navel, and the mating still stays at the head. So the vibration still emanates from the head, right, going down. But now you've got the tabor, which is the striking, pushes away the surrounding light.
And the vibration continues down into the end, to Sa.
Yes, exactly, because that's another expansion. So so what we said, you got the root phase, B'chinat Shoresh, phase 1, B'china Aleph, phase 2, B'china Bet, and phase 3, B'china Gimel, of the individual, right? So this is where he contains within him the nature, humanity, society, and group. But the tension that was meant to enter in B'china Dalet, phase 4, does not enter, right? Which is the individual, it gets pushed away. So you basically got a situation where the person has crossed the barrier and he feels that he's above his ego. Because he's separate from that tension of the individual. So he feels that if beforehand that tension was enveloping him to be sort of subservient to reality, now because he's not receiving that tension, he feels a little separate from reality. He feels a distance between himself, his I, his observable point, and the reality itself. All right, let's continue. Mating by striking.
Mating by striking. Balaha Salam. Interpretation. The Sabug de Haka, mating by striking, in the Pei mouth, the Rosh the Adam Katman, of the head of primordial man, and the Masak, screen, and Malhut the Rosh, kingdom of the head, called Pei, mouth, which was the reason for clothing the Or Primi, inner light, of Adam Kadmon, primordial man, by the Or Hoser, reflected light. It raised, is also the reason for the exit of the Or Makif, surrounding light of Adam Katman, primordial man, because it detained the light of Ensa, boundless, from the clothing in Behina Dalet, phase 4. The light came out in the form of Or Makif, surrounding light. In other words, that whole part of the light that the Or Hoser reflected light cannot clothe, like the Behina Dalet, phase 4 herself, came out and became Or Makif, surrounding light. Thus, the Masak screen in the Pei, mouth, is the reason for the Or Makif, surrounding light, as it is the reason for the Or Primi, inner light. Explanation. Interpretation. The mating by striking in the mouth of the head in the first phase after the barrier was the reason for clothing the inner light by the reflected light it raised. It is also the reason for the exit of the surrounding light, because it detained the light of boundless from clothing in the individual. The light came out in the form of surrounding light. In other words, that whole part of the light that the reflected light cannot clothe, that was meant to enter the egoism of the individual, came out and became surrounding light. Thus, the screen in the mouth is the reason for the surrounding light, as it is the reason for the inner light.
Direction. Explanation. Interpretation. The mating by striking in the mouth of the head in the first phase after the barrier was the reason for clothing the inner light by the reflected light it raised, is also the reason for the exit of the surrounding light. So what we saw beforehand was we had a situation where in the head, right, this is representing the head and this is the body, right, the interior. So the direct light, the Or Yashar, hit the Pedorosh, the mouth of the head, and then the reflected light went back up, right? And also the surrounding light, the Or Makif, went back up. So we've got a situation where in the head, the direct light is going from purity to coarseness, and the reflected light and the surrounding light are equal, where they're both going from coarseness to purity. So there doesn't seem to be a difference between the reflected light and the surrounding light. And therefore no beating can happen, since there's no apparent loss, since both the vibration from the screen and the light being pushed back, they're both going in the same direction. However, in the body, we have a situation where the direct light is going from purity to coarseness, but so is the reflected light going from purity to coarseness. And this is what allows attainment, because both the vessel, which is the reflected light, plus the thoughts, emotions, and sensations, which is the direct light, they're both going in the same direction from purity to coarseness, and therefore they can be attained. And then the person can feel, but wait a second, I'm not attaining, I'm not feeling the surrounding light. So then there's a conflict between what he feels and what he does not feel. Well, in the head, he doesn't feel anything because both the surrounding light and the vessels are both going in the same direction. They're going from coarseness to purity. While in the body, they're going, the vessels are going from purity to coarseness, while the tension that he's not receiving, not creating internal power from it, is going from coarseness to purity, and therefore it's not receiving it. You could give an example of this where, when someone plans they're going to go to a party and they're only going to have one beer. So when they have their calculation that they're planning, everything's fine. There's no sort of, oh, what do you mean only one bottle of beer? And then they actually go to the party and they have one bottle of beer, and then they're like, oh, but I can't have any more. So then they're pushing away. Then they're pushing away all the bottles that that they're not going to drink. And then they feel that sort of conflict of, wait a second, I can't actually have everything I wanted. And then that causes that beating where they lose their pleasure, they lose the internal power, they lose their strength. What do you think?
Can you go over the definition of what mating is and striking? Because that was in the first diagram, was it? Mating? So mating by striking. I feel like the striking has to happen first. It's almost like mating by striking. I don't know.
So the idea is like this. It's just talking about two situations. The striking is actually what's happening, and then you have the mating. Right? So it's mating by striking. Or you could say mating through striking. Right? So the idea is that the mating, right? So the mating is clothing. The mating is converting tension to internal power. That's what mating does. Striking pushes away the tension you cannot handle. So there's two things. There's one is to take causality over something, and that's the mating, right? And the second is that what you cannot take causality over, you have to push it away and not feel that tension. So the mating is the conversion of tension to internal power, and the striking is pushing away the tension that you cannot handle.
Mating always happens at the pay, right?
Exactly. Yes.
But it kind of seems like that it happens at the pay, but it's through the process of it going down into the tosh.
In the toch, yes.
And
yes.
As it purifies and comes back up, the mating happens after the purification.
So the mating is always happening if there's something to do mating on, right? So if the tabor, the navel, is at the same height as the pair, the mouth, right, which is where the mating is, then you have no internal power, because it's it's like, think of it like a valve opening and closing, right? So if it's like this, it's closed, and therefore you're not going to have any internal power. But if it starts lowering down, then in that separation between the mating and the striking, that will be your degree of internal power. And if it goes back up, then you get less internal power until it reaches root, and then there's no more internal power.
Exactly. Yes, I can catch the relationship of that, but it's I don't know. I guess I got to think about it a minute. There's something else I need to clarify.
No problem.
So the mating happens at the pay.
Yes.
And the striking, as it goes down, the purification doesn't happen till it's at the tosh, at the tabor in the tosh.
Yeah, in the toch, yeah.
Okay. So the striking is happening all along, and that's the purification, that striking and that conflict, the touche between the lights within the pay, I mean within the masak, the screen, is purifying it. So this action is what leads to the mating, or the mating's already happening before that?
The mating is always happening. So the mating is, again, think of it like a valve, right? when the mating is on the left, right, this is this hand, my mating hand, and this is my striking hand. Right? So this is, at the beginning, is the situation of the head. Then as it expands down, right, it goes down to the degree of the tabur. Right? Now I've got in between, I've got internal power between the head, right, the mating part,
right, exactly,
and the striking part.
Of course, within the different vessels within that.
Right. Now when the internal power,
at the tosh.
When the internal power reaches the bottom, now, right. So what am I receiving? I'm receiving root phase, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Everything's fine, and it's all gone through the mating. It's been converted, but now the part of the phase 4 is meant to go into its rightful place, which is in the end. But the tabur is there, and it's striking. It's not allowing that tension of phase 4 of the individual to enter. It's being pushed away, and then the person's like, "Wait, I didn't get everything." And that feeling of "I didn't get everything" is what causes the purification of the screen and like loses it. Right? It's like you know. I give this another example of a person is going to dinner with his friends, and he's having a great time. Then suddenly he sees his ex-wife on another table sitting with her boyfriend. What immediately happens? He starts to lose his taste. He starts to lose his appetite, because he was very happy beforehand, but then he sees something he's missing. He wants to be with his ex. So that desire that he can't achieve then gets rid of his current appetite. That's purification.
Okay.
Does the example make sense?
Oh, the example makes a lot of sense. I understand exactly what you're saying, that as the direct light comes down within the tabur, and the reflected light is closed upon it as it comes down, this is where you gain your internal power as it gets down to that bottom screen at the tabur. Yes. And that when it strikes there is when the purification begins, and you start to go back up, and that which you cannot bring into yourself, as you just explained, as a desire that you feel is missing, is your surrounding light, which is being reflected away.
Exactly. All right, let's continue. Terms. Because it detained the light of boundless from clothing an individual, the light came out in the form of surrounding light. So what we have is some terms that we can sort of translate. So we've got Atzmuto, which is his essence, which is the Tat Muda, the subconscious. We've got Ol Yashar, which is direct light, which is Metach, tension. We've got the Masach, the screen, which allows the ability to do Hitbonanut, which is reflection. We've got Or Chozer, which is reflected light, which is Sibatiyut, taking causality. We've got Or Makif, is surrounding light, which means Metach, which is tension, right? Because it's the same like the Ol Yashar, the direct light. It's tension that you're not receiving. And then Or Pnimi, inner light, is Koach, it's power. It's tension that you've received, which has been clothed with causality, and therefore it becomes power.
That's internal power, though, right?
Exactly.
Maybe you should put internal on you.
So the idea is that what we're dealing here is with a sort of the spiritual situation. So you could say it's all internal. The reason why this is called inner light is because it's saying that it's not in the head. So this is sort of the context. What do you think?
I think it's a great graph. It shows everything you need, all the details of the whole light coming in, moving down through the head, down past the pay into the tabur, or down to the top, to the tabur, and creating your internal power.
Exactly.
Zach, can you go back to the first diagram? I still want to see defining, striking, and mating.
We're going to see that I have it repeated.
Ah, okay. I still don't see how you're defining it like that. To me, striking is like some sort of reflection, something happening, it reflects.
It pushes away.
Yeah, that's what I see. Mating.
And that's the surrounding light. And the mating is the vibration. If I
going
punch,
downwards.
If I knock on the door, right? There are a few things that are happening. One, my fist is hitting the door, and then it's getting pushed back, right? So that pushback is the surrounding light. When I tap on the door, there's two sound waves that come. There's one sound wave that comes from the door towards me, and that's what I hear. And there's another sound wave that goes from the door to the other side.
Right.
All right. So the vibration coming from the door towards me, right, because I'm knocking on the door, that would be considered the reflected light of the head. And the vibration going from the other end, right, through the door to the people in the house, that would be the reflected light going, and then what would be clothing, what would be inner light. So the door doesn't really work with the concept of the light, but it does work with the concept of the reflection. So let's go to that diagram. Beading. Explanation. In other words, that the whole part of that light that reflected light cannot clothe, that was meant to enter the egoism of the individual, came out and became surrounding light. Thus the screen in the mouth is the reason for the surrounding light, as it is the reason for the inner light. Right, so we've got to hear the situation again. We've got the Rosh, which is the head, the Toch, the interior, the Sof, which is the end, and we've got the Malchut de Rosh, the kingdom of the head, which is the Peh, the mouth. We've got the Malchut de Toch, the kingdom of the interior, which is the Tabul, the navel. And we've got the Malchut de Sof, the kingdom of end, which is the Siyum, the end of legs. And the animation goes as forward. You've got the Ol Yashar, the direct light. It hits the mouth, right? You have the vibration going back up. That's the reflected light, the Ol Chozel. You have then the light that wasn't received within it, and therefore that's the Ol Makif, the surrounding light. Then you have this is called Histaklut, right? Observation in the head. Then you have a Hitpashtut, which is the expansion into the interior. The combination of the direct light that was clothed in the head, that means the root phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 enter into the interior and are clothed with the vibration from the screen of the mouth and lower, and that's the mating, as we said. And then we have instead of the phase 4 entering into the end, it gets pushed back and becomes Ol Makif surrounding light as well. And then finally, we've got the Ol Nekeva, which is the female light, which is the continuation of the vibration continuing down. And here you can see the phases. So we've got B'chinat Shorosh, root phase, B'chinat Aleph, phase 1, B'chinat Bet, phase 2, and B'chinat Gimel, phase 3, are received with the direct light and clothed. So these levels of nature, humanity, society, and group are clothed and converted from tension to internal power using the mating. And the striking, which is at the table of the navel, stops the light of B'chinat Dalet, phase 4, which is the individual, from entering its rightful place and gets pushed away and becomes Ol Makif surrounding light. What do you think, Moshe?
Yeah, okay, it makes sense now.
The screen at the pay acts like a bladder or a balloon and blows up and goes down into the Tosh, right? Down to the Taber.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yes.
Okay. So it actually expands itself down. So the screen at the Taber and the screen at the pay, in a way, are the same screen.
Exactly, but they're just two.
One is inflated and one is deflated.
Well, the idea is that the mouth represents the mating aspect, and the navel represents the striking aspect. Nectuality, right? So it's like if you have a balloon expanding, the entrance of the balloon is the peh, the mouth, right? The mouth of the balloon. And then the end of the balloon would be the navel, the one where all the pressure is on, right? Where the balloon would explode if too much
tension.
Too much tension was put in the balloon, right? It never explodes at the mouth. It explodes at the end of the balloon, where there's the most tension.
Where it has the most expansion.
Exactly.
Right? Thanks.
No problem.
This is Adam Kadmon. Does this change in absolute and on down to Ossia?
So
Ossia, no, but
so the basic premise is the same. There are additional factors that are taken into account later on with the second restriction and other things as well. But this is sort of the basic, you could say, fundamentals of the spiritual face. We have the head, which is the calculation, the interior, which is what you're receiving, and the end is not what you're not receiving, what you're not converting from tension to internal power.
is there any effect of the inner light in the end of legs?
What do you mean?
Well, you've got some inner light in the end, and is that felt in any way? Is that utilized in any way?
Well, think of it like this. There is some question, is there any internal power in the end? There's a question, is there internal power in the end at all? And the answer to that is, whatever there is there, it's not was meant to be there. What was meant to be there was the tension of the individual. So even if there is, let's say, for example, the root phase, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, even in the phase 4, it's considered sort of not matching. It's like getting less change than you're meant to. Does this make sense?
I think it does, but that's me.
I think it does too.
What do you think, Mark?
Well, yeah, I think it's clearer now than it was before, especially your previous diagram, the diagram before this one. But in that previous diagram, I guess I have a small question. The reflection, is that reflection as in a mirror reflection, a bouncing off of a surface, or is it thoughtful contemplation?
Thoughtful contemplation.
Reflecting on.
Thoughtful contemplation. Like you're reflecting on a situation.
Thank you.
No problem.
That clarifies things immensely. And I don't know that I ever remember seeing your previous diagram before like that. That's wonderful. That adds a lot of clarity, I think. Yeah,
this whole sort of the diagrams before were much more cumbersome. I think these are simpler to convey the message.
Zachary?
Yes.
So the screen is being purified along the way.
Yes.
Which means it can handle more?
No, it's adding less.
Yeah, exactly. So why is that? That's my question. Why?
Well, you're losing it, and then you get to your next screen. You get your next parts of your next face, right? So it's like you get another zivug daka, another mating while striking. It's like just to self off and try again.
You're basically breaking. You're losing. The screen is losing its ability to handle tension.
Yes.
To take causality.
Right. And then you reach a point where you're taking no causality, and then you try again on a lower level of coarseness.
Okay.
So the next time you're trying to receive, you're like, okay, so phase 4 I can't handle, it's too much. So you try to receive root phase, phase 1, phase 2, and then you're pushing away phase 3. And then you purify as well, and so forth.
Yeah, but if you were able to handle it the first time, how could you not be able to handle it the next time? As far like meaning, okay, you were able to handle phase, root 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Or you couldn't handle. Okay, great. Then you basically now only going to handle tensions of Shorish, Aleph, root 1 and 2, and restriction 3 and 4.
Right.
But you could have handled 3. You already did that.
Right, but the idea is that you still have that 4. It's now 3 and 4 you're pushing away, not just 3.
I mean, you're kind of screwed from the beginning, man. Because if you can handle 4,
but the idea is, but each time you try, and that's basically what you're experiencing off the bat. You're losing, every time 1.1, right, which is Galgalton Ab. You're in this situation. Then after you reach Ab, which is less, and then Sag less, then Ma less, and then in Boni you're basically living off your internal power that you're going to be having in the future. It's more like anticipation, right? So you're sort of anticipating what you're going to get, sort of idea.
It seems to me you're losing internal power along the way.
Yes, but the result of it, and this we'll talk about in future sessions, the result, what happens is that it builds an internal sort of strengthening. It's like there's a difference between someone failing at the beginning of their life and their 100th failure. What is the difference? The 100th failure, they're able to handle they're so much stronger to able to handle failures. Mm-hmm. So on one end, you could look at the purification as loss of internal power, but what it actually leaves behind it is vessels that when they get filled again, they stick their strength. That's what builds the person over time. So each time what the person is doing is he's building vessels within him that get filled with internal power, and then they stick. And he's only always dealing with the sort of extra, right, which gets all the time added and then purified, added and purified. Then he's building all this muscle behind it. It really does work like with muscle.
So basically, you're purposely failing to make yourself stronger.
Like when you do a workout.
Yeah.
Right? Each time you're sort of breaking yourself, right, to make yourself stronger.
Okay.
Is it a breaking, the Pticha?
So the difference between the breaking and the purification is that in the purification, you just lose your internal power. In the breaking, you actually fall in to the ego.
Right, because in the purification, why you're losing internal power is because you're correcting that coarseness at that level.
Exactly, but you're not breaking. You're not falling into the ego.
No, you're not breaking or falling into it, that you just lose that coarseness and you have it no longer available to you. Even in the kingdom, it's like it reflects there in the screen at that point is purified until it rises up to the next level of Behina Gimel. And then the process is repeated again, and it is corrected at that level, and that coarseness then is corrected. And then again, it goes up to the next level. And then once it gets back up to the pay, then what happens is that we have the mating and the birth of the next parsut up.
Exactly.
So you lose internal power, but it's like you say, you're strengthening yourself because you're coming more into alignment.
Right. It really is like building a spiritual muscle. Where you go do a workout, then you're a little sore afterwards, but you're doing that whole process because you're thinking of the overall building of your muscle. The spiritual muscle for internal power.
I have another question. Isn't the Or Nakiva, the female light, also reflected off at once the mating happens back at the pay and the purification is back up to that point? Isn't the Or Nakiva the light that reflects off and creates the next parsut?
No. So what light creates the next parsut is when it starts another mating by striking.
Yeah, but doesn't the light from Or Nakiva, the female light, also reflect over to the Rosh, taking like a reflection of the root vessels there?
No, the Or Nakiva doesn't go back up. It stays in the body. So the reflected light in the body stays in the body, doesn't go back up into the head. So you just have the purification of the screen. The direct light stops going in, but the reflected light actually stays inside. It doesn't purify. So when we talk about purification, we're only talking about the screen that purifies and the loss of the direct light. The reflected light actually stays there. The vibration stays in the body. You can think of it like talking into ice, talking into water and then freezing it, right? It leaves an imprint in the water itself, even long after you've even, not even talking to it anymore. So that imprint staying in the, of the water, affecting it, that is the reflected light. So even though you're no longer talking to it, it still, stays within. Right. I think we'll stop here and then do the after party.